Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special webinar on how can strategic edtech partnerships drive digital transformation and harness ambitious growth in business schools, kindly sponsored by X2O Media. My name is David Woods-Hale, and I'm Director of Marketing and Communications at Amber and BGA. I'm delighted to be joined today by Mansour Brek, President of X2O Media, and Lawrence Pulley, Dean of the Raymond A. Mason School of Business at William & Mary. Shortly, I'll hand over to them to run the session, but just before I do, in terms of some housekeeping, we want the session to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions at all, just pop them in the question box and we'll try and get through as many of those towards the end of the session as we can. And just to remind you all that if you miss anything, or there's anything you want to catch up on, the session will be recorded and you'll receive a recording of that with the post-events communications in about a week. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Mansour and Lawrence to run the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. Very pleased to be able to host this webinar for you, and I'm thrilled to have Dean Lawrence Pulley with us. Just a little blurb about our organizations. X2O Media is a global provider of virtual classroom technology for building hybrid classrooms that bring remote and in-room participants together in an immersive real-time learning environment wherever they are located. And William & Mary is the second oldest institution of higher learning in the United States and is a cutting-edge research university built on more than 300 years of innovation and excellence. A quick review of the agenda. We'll done the introductions. We'll look at the drivers reshaping business schools, how to prepare for the future, and talk about edtech partnerships. To which I'm going to ask Larry to set the stage by going through some of the global drivers reshaping higher education today.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Larry Pulley, and privileged to be here with you today. I know I'm talking to a bunch of business school deans and MBA program directors, so all of this is very familiar to you. I don't want to go through. These are some of our observations. You share a lot of the other observations as well. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there are a lot of demographic shifts we're looking at in the United States. Fewer 18 to 22-year-olds down the road, but we are looking at more and more professional students, folks who have hit speed bumps in their careers where they need short-term immersion in certain skill sets. Fewer international students willing to relocate or able to relocate, at least for now, but we hope that will change. We have some revenue challenges that we've all been dealing with, but as we say here at William & Mary, if you're trying to be nimble, innovative, and entrepreneurial, the flip side of every challenge is an opportunity. And technology has been a tremendous opportunity of late, as we've all experienced in the pandemic. We've used technology to adapt to students' learning styles, to take so much of what we do virtual, and to increasingly customize the learning experience to the individual student. We have seen a tremendous growth in hybrid synchronous learning. We've done both here and many other options, as I'm sure you have as well. Certainly this has been prevalent and dominant through the pandemic, and we suspect that many of these things that we have taken on and done during the pandemic will continue. One of the things we have long prided ourselves on here in the Mason School at William & Mary is personalized learning, high touch, high engagement. Technology, as we're all experiencing, allows us to customization for learning to take place at individual students' pace. But we've also experienced tremendously that when students are together with faculty and other students, whether it be face-to-face or online, they want to be engaged. They want to know that someone cares about them, that they are part of the learning process. We have seen a lot of growth in online programs here in the United States among business schools, as I'm sure all of you have as well. A couple of comments on the pandemic. This has been an abrupt change in the teaching model. So we have gone to blend this. We've tried to stay with some as much in residence teaching as we could, but with our classrooms downsized by social distancing, we've had to have, when we've had students in the classroom, we've had to have other students simultaneously connected by using technology. And many courses were put online more out of desperation than by design. So we are trying to sort out with what we've learned, pick and choose among the opportunities and the things that work and move forward as best we can, as I'm sure all of you are as well. Next slide, please, Mansour. These are, many of you may have seen this. This comes from Accenture. I won't hit many of these things. This picks up and gives more depth on some of what we were just talking about. If you look at I'll hit a couple. If you look at the second, evolving preferences for academic delivery to surge in demand for online adoption. And the question is, how much of this will stick? How much of what we have learned will help us transform and improve what we do in the future? Going down to the IT line there, IT as a service provider to IT as a critical mission partner. You know, IT is a vital enabler, and I think it has become even much more so. It's a vital enabler and online, but we have seen the same thing occurring on campuses of late, that IT has not been something we use as a backup, but is something we really use and put forward and enables us to transform and adapt and adopt. And then finally, this notion of activation of partnerships, the last line there, to radical business model transformation. We have seen that. We have had to adopt, we've had to adapt. We have tried to be, continue to be here at the Mason School, as many of you, all of you have, nimble, innovative, and entrepreneurial. We put up this academic policy board group and another FAST team, faculty at speed, to meet weekly, several times during the week, to make the changes as you have made the changes that we needed to make. The goal here was to discuss, decide, and done. I mean, we had to move far more rapidly on things that we had very little experience with than we had ever done before, and I'm sure you have as well. Next slide. And this is just a summary here. I mean, you guys, all of you can fill in content and your observations and thoughts about this. But, you know, the one thing I would say by way of just summary observation is the pandemic has taught all of us to think differently about and to seek differentiating opportunities for our programs in our schools. All of these items below, and you can talk about and see these, and I'm sure you'll recognize immediately the things that you're doing, how these have either presented challenges or opportunities to you. I won't go through these in detail, but kind of just leave these as some summary points for you to think about as well as we move forward with this presentation and discussion. And thank you again for being with us this morning. Mansour?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit about partnerships now, and I think, you know, the sort of one of the key sort of points I'd like to add to this slide is that, you know, during the pandemic, a lot of everybody had to jump online, and that was done in, you know, quickly in the most efficient and quick way possible. And so that was, you know, repurposing existing web conferencing tools like Zoom and Teams and WebEx and what have you. And it was necessary, and it was critical to getting through the past year. But now with all the trends that we're seeing and that Larry's talked about, you know, a lot of now we're looking at more long-term changes and you know, a real digital transformation that needs to take place to handle the future in terms of online versus the real world, and that's really where a partnership like this can help an institution move forward for the long term.
Yeah, and just picking up on that point, and we've all disrupted what we've been doing in significant ways. Some of those things have been, like I mentioned, out of desperation. Some of those things have been mentioned are probably more prescient in terms of what's to come. And I think we're thinking very differently about how can we transform what we're doing and be better. Better meet the needs of our students as well as the desires of our faculty to teach and engage the students in meaningful, deep, and rich learning experiences. And we want to talk a bit about the partnership that we've had between the Mason School and X2O Media, and as we move forward with this.
Yes. So I'm actually going to go over a use case. It's not a business school, but I thought it was really interesting because this is Future DJs is a company that teaching children and young adults how to create electronic music, and they were going into schools and doing that in person. And the reason we're highlighting it here is because they transformed their business completely and just did a complete shift from one-to-one learning to one-to-many in a digital platform, and it's really quite remarkable because while many businesses were struggling to adapt, they kept going full steam and really transformed their offering completely. So it was quite interesting in that sense, a great example of a digital transformation, and very thorough one. So we partnered with them to help them build a custom virtual platform to scale their music education globally. They wanted to create a musical stage to make music education fun and accessible to everyone, whereas it may not have been in the past. And to do that, and to say it and to do it is one thing, but to do it is another. Because in order for you to be able to take what you were doing, live in a classroom and bring it online, you really needed to keep that level of engagement and interactivity and sort of high touch between those teachers and their students. So that was critical to allow them to make that move. And then having the technology to support them, and including things like enhanced audio to be able to handle music was part of that. And after a lot of work, they launched the Virtuoso Music Stage in February of this year. And then in March, launched 2 additional training examination rooms and are developing a second virtual stage. Virtuoso has attracted more than 2,700 global participants, and they've added now many master classes with renowned musicians and DJs and workshops. It's quite something to have seen the transformation take place. And interestingly enough, their exams are now accredited by the University of West London, I believe. So quite an interesting story. So they have a little testimonial that I'm going to share, which talks a little bit about that.
When we started our journey with X2O Media, we were aligned from day one. We wanted to build a new platform to deliver our mission to make inspiring music education accessible to everyone. And X2O were ready to make it happen with all of the adaptability and innovation that we were looking for. It was clear from the beginning of our partnership that X2O were on another level, and the events of 2020 only confirmed this. While most businesses struggle to adapt, we here at Virtuoso powered ahead with X2O to start building our vision. Well ahead of our original schedule, we had built our first virtual classroom, and the massive opportunities this created for us became clear, and people started to take notice, wanting to see what our platform could do for their business. We can now connect with far more people than ever before, whether it's for learning, conferencing, training, sales, it's all possible. For us, though, this is just the beginning. We continue to grow our platform to fulfill the Virtuoso mission. X2O is enabling us to scale our business rapidly. We've already ordered 2 more collaboration rooms for new locations in the UK. The ultimate goal is to connect our music education platform to the whole world, and X2O will be a part of how we get there.
So yeah, it was really exciting to see that live. I'll turn it, okay, great, thank you. I'll turn it back over to Larry.
You know, we started our partnership talking about this with X2O actually before the pandemic, and our goal then was we were increasingly engaging more remote participants, actually reaching out to alumni and experts all over the world, and we wanted to engage them effectively with our students, and we wanted to be thinking about X2O helped us with a very generous donor who was interested in moving this project forward for us. And we wanted to think about, you know, how do we create the next best thing being there in terms of a virtual classroom? And, X2O has provided the perfect answer for us. We wanted to accommodate increasing demand and really improve the learning experience, not only the learning experience, but the engagement, the feeling that we're not just, the remote participants are not just watching something going on, they're actually very much engaged, front and center, as much engaged as the students who are sitting in the classroom. And as I mentioned, we are increasingly, the pandemic has greatly stimulated this for us, as it has, I'm sure, for you, engaging alumni and experts all over the world with our students using Zoom and other technologies. We retrofitted 3 existing classrooms, 2 seminar rooms, and a conference room. You know, our goal was to avoid very big spaces because we really, we wanted we wanted did not want to lose engagement and intimacy on the part of the remote students. You walk in and you get an immediate sense, whether you're in the classroom or remote. And X2O, I mean, you're participating. Everybody has access to the whiteboard with the cameras, the technology. It really is the next best thing to being there. We are very, very pleased with this. If you look down to the bottom bullet point there, you know, the great thing about the partnership and the company that has been working on installing this, and we've really just completed recently the installation. We're now in the process of the training. You know, it was very much a learning by doing process. One of the questions when Mansour hosted our faculty using their virtual classroom, you know, we were participants. One of our faculty members said, well, you know, this is great stuff, but I do a lot of work in teams. And they said, how do you get the participants, remote participants, breaking up and assigned to teams? They went back, figured out how to do that. And then in the next, we were all assigned to teams. You know, they have their own, teams have their own whiteboard. They can interact with that. We were charged with designing one of the landmarks on campus, Crimdale Bridge, which we all did in our teams, and it worked out spectacularly. The other thing that the group that has been installing and working with our team, our project building managers, is, you know, to figure out and work through the kinks and make sure this is compatible with our systems, make sure it is user-friendly, you know, because it's not going to be implemented unless faculty members can use it successfully and well. And not only that, as that our IT staff have, it works easily for them. And you know, I tell you, this partnership has really been terrific from the standpoint of the A to Z relationship. And we're very, very excited about moving forward with what this will enable us to do. Mansour, if you flip over to the next slide. These are renderings, pretty accurate renderings of our two seminar rooms. We can get up, I think, to 60 remote participants using the various capacities of the remote monitors. And the other thing that we did that really worked out very well is rather than having the monitors and the computers driving them on the wall, we put them on movable racks. So you can actually, if we want to change configuration or move these to another room, and I have to tell you, it really gives the thing a very, very high-tech look and feel. You can also highlight an outside participant, a remote participant as the speaker, so we can bring in alumni and other experts, turn over control of the classroom to them. So it gives remarkable flexibility and adaptability. Mansour, next slide, please. And the other thing, we decided to transform a conference room. And I think this will allow us to have the same level of engagement and intimacy, but smaller numbers of in-person attendees. We are looking at reaching out to our corporate partners and allowing them to use our facilities as well as other folks on campus. I think this can enhance our partnerships with the companies and other organizations that we serve, also can generate revenues. So we're as excited about this conference room setup as we are with our seminar rooms. And here again, unlike what's displayed in the initial rendering, we have all of the monitors on movable racks. So we have a lot of adaptability and flexibility. Thank you, Mansour.
That's great. Great stuff. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and that's a great last point about that reach out to the local business community and being able to reuse the classroom and both as a source of revenue and as a way to increase that engagement with that business community is something that's very valuable to most schools, I believe. So David, we've got a quick poll we'd like to get everyone's feedback on.
Of course, I'm just going to now launch the poll question for you now. So that should be appearing on your screens now. The question is, how do you see EdTech partnerships adding value to the student experience at your school? So check all that apply to you. The options are optimize capacity of existing infrastructure, for example, classrooms, expand programs and opportunities for global collaboration, less travel for staff and students, or flexibility to learn at your own pace. So I'll just leave that for a couple of minutes for everyone to fill it in. I can see some of you already have. Okay, I'm just going to leave that open for another couple of seconds. I can see some people are still filling it in. Rightio, thank you everyone. I'm just going to close the poll now. Okay, so in terms of the results, 59% said optimize capacity of existing infrastructure. 65% said expand programs and opportunities for global collaboration. 47% said less travel for staff and students, and 29% said flexibility to learn at your pace.
Okay. That's great. Thank you, everyone, for that. Yeah, so that's interesting. So I think it's confirms that expanding programs and opportunities for global collaboration is the highest, the most important element there. And I think certainly these types of rooms and these types of partnerships would enhance that. Okay, let's continue on. So we want to talk about hybrid learning environments now, as you've seen with the rooms that that Dean Pulley shared with you, and some of the other examples. Because the hybrid room is I believe, and from all indications that we're getting from all the different schools and even the corporate world that we're talking to, is really the biggest change that's here to stay. And regardless of whether we're in the pandemic or not, it's something that we think is part of everybody's future, and it's something that's not easy to pull off. A purely virtual environment where you have all your students remote, is a challenge to do it right and to make it immersive and engaging. But then to make that a hybrid room is much more difficult, and we've done a lot of work on that, and we have a number of different environments that all share that desire to have that hybrid room. And here's a couple of examples at HEC and IMD Business School, and the goal is really to allow you to have these sessions where it doesn't matter whether you're remote or in the room, and you want to allow your students and faculty to really be able to interact in the most effective way possible. And some of the things we've done to help with that is we even have additional in-room cameras that would focus on the in-room participants when they speak, because it's almost gone in the opposite direction, where the people who are remote become favored versus the people who are in the room, which is not something you want to do either. You really want to put everyone on equal footing. Additional cameras allow us to focus on the person that's in the room when they're speaking, and put them on the same level as a remote person who's speaking. So these hybrid environments and the success of them, really depends on that environment that's being built, like you see here, and as well as how the sessions are designed. They need to be designed to be interactive. You want to make it an immersive, so human experience with that is high touch and a lot of interaction between the participants as well as the faculty. And you're really using technology here, as a vector to promote that learning. And so we've seen some interesting results where some of the surveys that people have conducted after the sessions. One of them, surprisingly, was found that the remote they were getting higher marks from the remote participants than they were from the in-room participants, and that's something where we needed to adapt and make sure that the in-room participants aren't forgotten and are put on that equal footing. So that was an interesting finding. And there was also impressive networking that was going on, even though students had never met in person. So really all critical aspects for the success of a hybrid learning environment. And here's a couple more examples on the corporate side, because they're going through the same transformation for their internal learning and development. A couple of examples at Nestle and at Coca-Cola, where they're also finding that same need that you all are, to have this equally effective hybrid training and learning environment. Okay. So our last slide here, we really wanted to talk about the 4 key steps to creating your own immersive classroom, and how important all the different steps are. First one, obviously define the use case, understand the needs of the school, and make sure that these rooms align with the school's digital strategy. And as we talked earlier, it's really about a digital transformation here, and not a quick fix. So that's important that that's understood, and it's adapted to the school specific strategy, right? It's not all the same. Not everyone's requirements are the same. So it's important that we understand it in each case and make sure that the resulting solution aligns with that strategy. And then time needs to be spent to design the experience, considering the curriculum and infrastructure to design the right experience for you. We found it, I think with Larry, we really found it extremely helpful to, as he was mentioning, to include all the different stakeholders from IT and getting the faculty on board, including them early on in this is really critical to the success of this transformation. They're the ones going to be teaching in the room, so it's critical that we have their buy-in and get their feedback on what's important to them. And on that point, one of the things we've discovered is, I like to talk, the teacher has almost been the forgotten victim in a lot of this transformation, if you will, because we're so focused on making sure all of the students are immersed and are really engaged, and the class is providing them the same level of education as they were before. But we're expecting our professors and teachers to be, just as engaging as they were before, because that engagement is so critical. But now they need to be tethered to a laptop or sitting at their desk. And a great presenter, it's kind of difficult for somebody who's dynamic and likes to walk around the room and go to the whiteboard and then go and talk to their students to convey that same level of energy when they're tethered to their laptop. So these rooms, really, an important aspect of them is that they allow the teacher to be themselves and to be able to go in and just behave the way they would normally in terms of how they interact with the room, with the whiteboard, with the students. It's a really critical aspect to getting a teacher's buy-in and allowing them to really shine and be themselves in teaching the students. The third step, I think Larry can also attest to this, is that you visualize the environment. Once you've identified the space and decided on the type of environment you want to build, we will build a rendering of that room, which should allow you to really get a feel for what it's going to look like, how it's going to behave, what it's going to feel like to be in the room before it's built. And I think it also allows you to help sell it internally as more people can see what that resulting room is gonna look like. Larry, how did you find how important was that in terms of moving it forward?
That was just vitally important. I mean, to have the rendering. And the other thing that you mentioned before, to engage the faculty, initially as you put them in your room as remote participants, so they can see what the student experience was going to be like, the attendee experience. And this other thing, we have used, like many of you, so much Zoom over the last year, and so there are a lot of comparisons and contrasts, and the constraining factor of that technology, that you have to stand there in front of your camera. I mean, our faculty are very animated. We built our classrooms with a lot of space up front for faculty members to walk around, to walk up to and engage students. And, we learned so much from those experiments, and then from, as Mansour mentioned, the creating the renderings, so we could think about that. But, the sessions we had, the opportunities, because faculty members don't get to be students very often, and have them be students with the new and emerging and what's next technology. Our faculty learned so much. They were engaged throughout the process, and I have to commend X2O and the installers for being immensely responsive to suggestions by our faculty. The one I mentioned earlier is, what about being able to break up into groups or teams, and the way they came back with an innovation solution to that has been impressive. And that kind of involvement, that kind of responsiveness engages faculty, and nothing moves forward in business schools unless faculty are engaged.
Yes, absolutely. And HB Communications was actually our AV partner that helped build this.
They did a fabulous job for us.
Yes, they did. Yeah. And nice to see. I think a few of them are on today, so that's great to see them. So the last part here is the budget ROI. I mean, you know, we are understanding the ROI for a project like this is key, and we certainly help, you know, provide you with whatever information we can to help justify that. And certainly the ROI is not always just straight numbers on a spreadsheet, but in terms of the prestige that it'll bring to the school, the ability to reach out to that more global audience, or to alumni, or to the local business community that may not be able to come into the classroom. So calculating that overall ROI is quite a challenge, and we're again, you know, the great partnership that we had with Larry's Mason School of Business. We helped where we could, and we were actually involved in the presentations as we went to donors to help build that room.
They were very, very helpful in engaging our donors' support, who provided pretty much all the funding we needed to install this technology. I don't think we would have been able to succeed with that if it hadn't been for X2O's partnership and being able to engage the donor in mock-ups and simulations and whatnot.
Okay. Great. So I think we're going to open it up to questions, Larry, unless there was anything else you wanted to add.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right.
Lovely, thank you very much. We've had several questions come through. Just to remind everyone, if you have a question, just pop it into the question box and we'll try and get through as many as we can. The first question we've had is regarding hybrid environments. So they're really asking, you know, if I think it's probably one for you, Larry, if you use hybrid environments, and then for both of you, in terms of maintaining engagement for students, how do you make sure that students who study remotely, as well as students who study on campus, are not at a disadvantage when it comes to learning in these sort of classrooms?
Well, you know, let me address that. You know, we were thrown in that environment. I mean, most of our classrooms seat about 50 students. They're full. With social distancing, we couldn't get but 25 students in our classroom. So we tried the hybrid environment where you would have half the class in the classroom with the faculty member one day, half the class connected remotely by Zoom, and then switch the next class. The Zoom half would be in the classroom. That was very, very hard. It was very hard. We even had course assistants to try to help the faculty member manage the Zoom participants, the chat, and whatnot. And so much so that after a while, a number of our faculty went to a fully synchronous Zoom environment because they felt that they couldn't engage the remote participants. We are really looking forward to the X2O classrooms as the right solution to that, where it will be seamless engagement between the in classroom participants and the remote participants. We really do see this as, while allowing the faculty member to still be her or himself and walking around and engaging. And, you know, the voices come out of the monitors. I mean, the students, even though they're on monitors, they look like they're there. We are now engaged in that training. So we had our faculty had a lot of trouble. We did all kinds of mock-ups, practice sessions over the summer, tried different microphones. It's very hard with existing tools to handle a hybrid teaching environment effectively. We really see this as a significant step forward. It has just now been all put in place in the middle of the semester, so we're really now giving faculty members the experience of understanding how to do that, and are looking forward to knowing more about our success with that than we do now in the future when we've had that experience. But we are really dependent on this to sort of dramatically improve for us the hybrid teaching environment, certainly the experience we've had over the last 2 semesters.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I could add, I went back to that slide with some of the hybrid environments there, and really that the general philosophy of that room is to try to immerse the room and the remote participants. So it's important that the remote participants are not little postage stamp, pictures of them, that there you can, as you can see here, the remote participant, the size of the video is life size. They're as big as the people in the room. So that again, nobody feels forgotten, and they're when you're having a conversation in a hybrid room, and if the remote participants are just a voice on the phone or a small speck on the screen, it's very easy to forget that they're there and not engage with them as much. By having these dedicated avatar displays for all the remote participants and the directional audio, it immerses the people in the room with them, and it makes those the presence for the remote people really felt.
Thank you very much. Just building on that, someone else has asked how far hybrid classrooms allow for tools such as polls or other interactions, and how you really work with those in practice.
A good question. So again, very important to make sure that you take all of that into account. So for example, one of the nice things with that with that is if you put up a poll, the in-room participants can vote from their laptops or tablets. The remote people are voting from their interface. The results are shown on the screen in the front of the room. And there's also a dedicated display, a confidence monitor for the instructor or the professor to see the results. And as well, I think in the last question, the chat was one of or Larry mentioned that keeping up with the chat is something that's difficult as you as a professor try to walk around the room and teach. And the confidence monitor actually allows you to see the results of the polls. It allows you to see the results of the chat. So it's very important to have a very visible spot for you to be able to see all that, again, without being tethered to a podium with your laptop on it. And in this picture that you see here, you can actually see, I think the remote parts where they're in breakout groups at the moment, and you could see the color coding and at the top right, who's in with each student being in different groups. So that hybrid environment again allows you to, the people that are physically in the room can, sort of walk over and huddle in different areas. You can see what groups they're in, and the remote people, you could see on the screen which groups they're in. So it's important that the technology really has to give you as much feedback as possible to allow you to have that those types of things, especially breakout groups that work really well.
Lovely, thank you very much. We've had a few questions around faculty, so I'm just going to try and combine them to try and ask them all at once. So somebody's asked, basically, in terms of this is for you, Lawrence. In terms of faculty, were they open to learning how to use the new technology, and how did you really create buy-in? And then building on that, someone else has just asked if there's a need for additional training for faculty to be able to present their material in a virtual classroom.
That's interesting. We had a preliminary presentation that Mansour and others, one of our alums that has a related company, made for me, and I actually went through that presentation at a faculty meeting, the last faculty meeting in the fall semester a year ago, and asked faculty if they would be interested in learning more about this technology. And I was surprised by the response. So we engaged the faculty throughout that process, and got them engaged as participants. With Mansour, we had sessions where they were able to ask questions, and I mentioned the responsiveness on, hey, I mean, how do we break out in groups? I don't see that we can do that now, and they immediately implemented that, came back. I think they built a level of engagement and trust with the faculty that's absolutely essential. I've been very, very pleased with that. We are in the process now of having training sessions for our faculty, and we are looking forward and actually I was thinking about this yesterday, the possibility of tapping someone to be basically the point person for this technology and promote its use, because we have, I think, a lot of the things we do in terms of events that engage alumni and students, board meetings, all of these other things. I mean, we see this as a huge asset moving forward. We want to make sure that it is user-friendly in terms of the faculty they experience, they are trained and supported well. But we also really want to promote this asset as broadly as we possibly can. I think there are a lot of sources of opportunities to use this that we haven't even envisioned. So I think the key is, as I mentioned, when I made that presentation to the faculty, I had no idea what kind of response we would get. I was overwhelmed by the positive response, and we immediately then got our faculty engaged with Mansour and his team, and we were participants. We had feedback sessions. We had our technology folks, our program folks, and those of us in business schools, all of you know that any initiative that's going to move forward has to have that level of engagement and partnership with your important faculty and staff. So I would encourage all of you that are thinking about doing this to get faculty involved from the get-go.
Yeah, and if I could add, I mean, there's a little bit of training involved, but I think what's more important is to allow the teachers to get comfortable in the environment. And it takes a bit of time, at least probably the first 20-30 minutes to get comfortable and get the right rhythm in teaching in a hybrid room like this versus in the normal room. So you want to allow the teachers to get comfortable, and because it is different. It takes a little more energy than a typical physical classroom with the lights and the screens and just getting used to it. And there's a lot of little simple things, as we transition to this online world. For example, you're presenting PDF documents or Word documents, they should be presented in landscape format because people consume them on their screens, and just it'll fill the screen better and it'll look better on the whiteboard. So the little things that just help make the sessions more effective and interesting.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Just again, combining a couple of questions. So somebody has asked if it is possible for there to be breakout sessions with both people who are in a classroom and attending remote using this system. And just to sort of expand on that a little bit, somebody else has asked if it's possible for X2O technology to be adapted for training or lab purposes.
For training what, sorry?
Training or laboratory purposes.
Okay. Yes. The first question, in terms of breakout groups, certainly the simplest way to do breakout groups is to have the people in the room break into groups and the remote people to break into groups. But you often want to go beyond that, especially in executive education. You want to be able to mix those groups, so regardless of whether they're in the room or not. And the challenge when you do that is the audio, right? Is that you want to have the people in the room talking to the remote participants. And what we found, if the class is big enough, you could attempt to do it in the room, but the most effective way is to perhaps have some smaller physical breakout rooms that are outside this virtual classroom. And then when people do break up into groups, you can have people go off into those other little areas, or it could be just an area outside the room, so that they have the ability to talk to the remote participants and to hear them without crosstalk between the different groups. So having little physical breakout rooms or spaces would allow you to bring the people in the room and the remote together, and it is an important question. In terms of using this environment to teach in a lab environment, it actually lends itself very well. And the reason for that is that this room comes with a number of cameras that can show, in addition to showing the professor at the front of the room and the whole environment of the people in the room. You can also have cameras that are focused on a lab experiment. It can be focused on a workbench, a document camera, a digital microscope, a medical mannequin. So those additional cameras, the remote participants are able to actually select which view they want to look at, so they can look around the room, so to speak, just as if they were in the room. And each person can choose what they're looking at independently. And the goal there obviously is just to allow the remote person to engage in the session, so they could decide, I want to look at that professor, or I want to look at what he or she is doing on that workbench, or on that lab experiment, and so on. So it actually lends itself very well to physical environments. That DJ example is a DJ example, but it was quite similar in that students were able to look at the DJ panel instead of looking at the teacher, and look at that room from different angles. So that's quite similar to a lab environment.
Perfect, thank you very much. I'm just going to combine another couple of questions. So somebody's asking, how many students does the hybrid classroom work best with? And just to expand on that, I suppose one for yourself, Larry, do you have to upgrade your Wi-Fi connections to be able to cope with having so many screens?
I'll answer the second question, and then let Mansour talk through the answer to the first question from a technology standpoint of the monitor's capacity. We were in pretty good shape on bandwidth. We also, when we built this building in 2011, allowed a lot of extra pipe for pulling wires to support things. You do have to have significant technology. Quite frankly, having putting the monitors on portable racks saved some construction costs that we would have had to expend with William Mary Facilities folks to come in and deal with walls and whatnot. But we were very pleased with the lack of additional investment in pulling wires, and also having enough bandwidth to the two locations. These were seminar rooms, so they were not our main classrooms, and so you might think that they would be under-equipped in terms of wiring and bandwidth, but we found that not to be the case. And with the company that Mansour mentioned, and we've already given kudos to, they were immensely helpful, and we had to have a few workarounds around things, but we found some creative solutions. So Mansour, talk about how many folks you can have on the monitors.
Yeah, so typically, like in the example that's still on the screen, we would typically have two remote students on a monitor, again, to achieve that level of realism. But you could certainly scale up the room and put whatever 6 or 8 or even more if needed to have a bigger classroom. It's tough to answer how big of a room is most effective, but I think what we've seen is that the 24 to 32 is a real nice range for the number of remote participants to keep the class size reasonable and still allow a good level of engagement with the faculty.
Mansour, I think it's right that we have 12 monitors in our 2 seminar classrooms. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So by default, I think you have 24 remote students and the ability to scale up when needed.
Yeah.
And I think You said your class sizes, Larry, you try to keep them at around 50, is that correct?
Well, these are our large classrooms that we have. At our largest classroom, we have 260 seats classrooms, and I think about a dozen or 10 or 12 45, 50 seat classrooms. So this is kind of the ability we can easily scale up to with in classroom and remote participants, 40, 50, 60, using the setup we have now.
Okay, so another question that's come through is obviously it's an imperative for business schools to enable networking with corporates for ongoing careers and employment, especially in MBA programs. And they're asking if this technology could be used potentially with for recruitment or for networking events with corporates.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's one of the areas that we see tremendous possibilities here to. We have recruiters come on campus for sessions with interested students. We launched several years ago online programs. We have an online MBA, online MS, Master of Science in Business Analytics, Master of Science in Marketing, and are launching an online Master of Science in Finance with real estate in August. And we see really this is an opportunity because one of the things we are sorting out is career services support for our online students. We see this as a tremendous way to engage the online students when we have recruiters making presentations, students interacting with recruiters, so on and so forth. So we see this as a huge asset in the career engagement and the alumni and recruiter engagement, employer engagement. We think this technology is perfectly well suited for that.
Yes, and if I could add to that, it's one of the interesting use cases, and actually the original idea actually came from one of Larry's professors, is that let's say you're having an executive education session, and you obviously want to allow people the opportunity to network and to interact. So what the system can allow you to do is, you know, if you're during the breaks, you may take a half-hour break, and you can actually set up the breakout groups so that they're active during those breaks, and then students can choose to jump into different groups on their own. So they can go off and chat in smaller groups, and they have the ability to go into one group and leave and go to the other. We actually held our Christmas party within our own virtual classroom, and so we set up a bunch of different breakout groups with different games in each group, and then our employees were able to either go into a little group and have a private chat, or go into another group and where there's a certain game was going on. But having that ability for the students to, you know, to leave and join a group allows you to create that sort of little chats at the coffee cooler within this virtual environment. And one of the ideas that Larry's professors came up with was also to start the session early to allow students to talk to guidance counselors or academic advisors that could be available in those breakout groups before the class starts or afterwards, and they can jump in and have those conversations as well.
Lovely, thank you very much. I think we've got time for a couple of questions. Just as one for you, Mansour, just a point of clarification. Somebody's just asking, can you outline some of the ways that the X2O classroom solution differs from a traditional or typical video conferencing solution?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's not a web conferencing solution that's just being repurposed here. It's actually designed for teaching. So there's, you know, special interfaces for the teacher to interact with the room, you know, with one touch. Just for example, on the whiteboard, they can initiate the groups with a single touch or jump from group to group. So the fact, you know, it's designed for that, for teaching and for learning is really critical. And the engagement is probably the most important thing, that one-to-one engagement. So the directional audio, and then the dedicated cameras for each remote student. allowing the the teacher and that student to connect. And like right now, it feels like we're talking to the ether. If I'm answering the question, I'd like to be able to see that the person that's asked me the question and look at them when I answer it, and so that engagement is really key. And then the content sharing is also critical in terms of being able to share any type of content in the classroom, anything from multimedia, videos, images, PowerPoints, PDFs, and then they all need to show up on that whiteboard in the room for the in-room participants, and you need to be able to collaborate on that material. So that content sharing is critical.
Okay, lovely. And one last quick question just to finish for both of you. What do you think will be the longer term benefit of your partnership?
For me, and we think a lot about not only being engaged with what's now, but also with what's next in edtech, and also in our ability to engage our faculty. I mean, we pride ourselves, as so many of you do, with personal interactions and engagement, a personalized experience-based approach to management education, and we see this as really facilitating that. And I would say that what we have done in the Mason School over the last half dozen years to engage our alumni and recruiters actively is, that we are doing a very good job at getting companies and employers and alumni working side by side with our faculty and program teams to figure out and deliver what it takes to make our students truly career ready and connect them to world-class opportunities. And I see this technology, this opportunity with X2O as a tremendous enabler for being able to do that in the future, or continue to do that and enhance how we do that, regardless of how higher education and technology and in education, how all of these things change and evolve.
That's great. And for us, it's very simple. Having access to feedback from the faculty and the students to make real world improvements to the platform to help both the teaching and the learning, and then have the decisions be based on research on what works well and what doesn't. So we believe partnering with an institution like this really allows our platform to continue evolving and go to that next level by being supported with facts and with real research and feedback from actual professors and students.
Lovely. Thank you both very much. I'm afraid that is all we have time for, but that's a great place to finish. So thank you for that. Thank you everyone for sending in your questions. We have a few more. Sorry, I haven't got time to get through them all. What I will do is pass them on to the speakers and ask if they'd like to reply to you directly. You will receive a recording of the entire webinar within the next week, so you can refresh your memory and anything you might have missed. And all that remains for me to say is thank you once again to Lawrence and to Mansour and to X2O Media for sponsoring this event. It's really important for organizations like yourselves that support us in helping deliver this type of thought leadership to our members, so it's always greatly appreciated. Thank you once again, everyone, for taking part, for listening, and for your interaction, and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone, and thank you for participating.